For the Logan office.
So I just caught this logo.
Oh, you
I
did?
caught this logo.
Oh. If they won't be on there, they're not, they won't be on
I told Isabel that like a week or two ago, so. That's why.
Take too long then?
Well, if nobody jumps on them, we'll just skip the thing, but.
Yeah. Is that your slideshow?
Yep.
Okay.
Good, how are you? Yeah. You get once you get past like. Sandy and. That's gotten more and more. Riley, how old are you? 25. You're the kid that went out and used to play hockey or something?
Yeah, well, actually, I went to Colorado and my own.
Okay.
And I used to say stuff.
Yeah,
I got a. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think we're in a short window.
Something, girl. Let me see. I was what I'm thinking. Okay.
What's up, Johnny?
I don't know.
What's up? How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, man. How's life?
Good, good.
Enjoying summer yet?
It's hot.
Yeah.
Do you want to sit back here? Get over.
You said you were getting.
That's fine.
Okay.
People always record stuff, and I still have 0% of people that's ever gone on and rewatched. So I'm safe. You never know.
Let's give it like 5 more minutes. We're gonna have people to roll in and then we'll start it.
Heck yeah.
Star.
It's been a minute. I've been in this office specifically. Yeah, you bet. Yeah. There's pros and cons. I live so close to the Orem office. I'm there in 4 minutes. Actually, I was just down in Austin for the Gary Taylor and Platinum match tonight. And me and Slay looked up Gary Taylor's express and realized it was like 3 minutes from his ride. He bought like 4 giant lots in like a 3 neighborhood, and he's like 11. He's got like a wall. And it was like kids in because I never like phone calls, talk, like podcasts. Like there are some pros to private. You don't let anybody in this class. When you check your qualifications at the door. We have an obvious. Yeah, sorry.
Next time you have to be there.
So you're healthy, perfect. No babies for a while.
Yeah.
My bubble was like. Now I have a bubble bath with 3 months.
Liar.
Stay away from her. My bubble is gonna get bigger.
I think it's gonna be.
Hey, that's it.
You're gonna be like,
Oh, my bubble was the big back.
Yeah.
Oh, quiet.
I said no break.
Oh, click on the screen again.
Let's do it.
There we go. All right, welcome everybody. How's it going?
Good.
Good. Is this an official More Club event?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for continuing on in the More Club. Yeah, I've been in the car 8 hours, so it's something about glad to be here. I mentioned a few, it's been a minute. I think it's been, what, 3 years or something, that's specifically been in this office. 2 years, maybe, I can't remember.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, Corey was 32 back then, so. Do you guys know where the More Club came from? No.
I thought it was Marcus.
Marcus thinks he created everything.
That's what I said, I thought.
So I was a team leader. It was probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and I was looking at our training calendar. It's probably the 100th time we'd put a training calendar together. And I was just looking at it and I'm like, all right, let's peel off everything that's for new or medium, agents in our roster. And once we started taking off those classes just to view what was there for our top producers, I realized that, I think we kind of got into revolutions of this, but I realized that like our entire training calendar was built from like the bottom 80% of our roster. And I'm like, crap, like we got to do something, and so I basically gathered together all of our top producers down there in the forum office. And I said, I want to start an exclusive club. That's your club, that you own it, that we just figure out what the value is that you want, blah, blah, blah. And we kind of determined what the club looks like. So even the More Club, Masters of Real Estate, was one of like 7 names that we were considering. One was Maverick. I don't know why someone threw Maverick out there, but More Club just really resonated. So we kind of create some criteria. And we just voted that we were going to do one thing every single month that was going to be incredibly high value, that was going to bring all of our top producers in. A lot of our top producers are just moving so fast and all over the place that if we just do one thing a month that was really cool, it would be our More Club event. So it is not our club, it's your club, you know, so a lot of our best events every month out of the More Club was some sort of connection or some sort of idea that came from one of the members. So keep it going. I like it. You know, when I became regional director, we kind of launched that region wide. So we have some commonalities in the market centers, but I think half of our office kind of just like kicked to the wayside, and then half of them are still rolling with it. So otherwise, if we don't do it, our training calendars just kind of get boring for our top producers again. So keep it high level. Some of my favorite things we've done the last 10 years were all More Club events, you know, tours, we brought speakers in, and we went and, you know, got some sort of exclusive access to something. You'd be really surprised when you call on the behalf of your office and, hey, we've got the best producers in all of Weaver and Davis County. Can we get into this? Like, you get yeses quite a bit. So just think really big on this and just keep rolling on it. So, well, I'm glad you guys came to this. We're going to spend kind of 90 minutes rolling through this content. You know, hey, if you don't know who I am, my name is Jonny Christensen. I'm the state director for Keller Williams, Utah. I've been in the business since 2007, started selling real estate for about 4 years in the miserable Great Recession. But I learned a lot of just great skill set, you know, in that time period that has just totally blessed me throughout my career. Even our new agents that are coming online in KW right now, I'm really happy about, just because even 2 years ago, it was a bunch of spoiled kids that were getting in, you know, that just expected business to fall in. But I think anybody that's getting in the business now just understand what the market's like and the resilience and the grind that it takes to go succeed. That those people are probably going to be our top producers and own teams and whatnot 5-10 years from now. So, hello, how can I help you? Great day, how it is.
Well, this sorry.
Is that a song or a phone call? Oh, okay, all right. I thought you were just playing my ambient noise. All right. What? Apple. See their AI they're rolling out. Excited about it. Well, so I've been a part of Keller Williams. I stepped in the team leader role in 2011. I was the team leader down south for about 10 years. So I grew that office down in Westfield from about 60 to 300-ish. When I stepped out of the team leader role, you know, I kept my real estate team that I'm 50-50 partners with Clay Winder that we still own. My team does roughly about 300 deals a year, somewhere around 150 million-ish volume. We've kind of just really crushed. We didn't really follow the market down as we dropped all those units with the rates. So I really think we're kind of humming with a lot of efficiencies that we spent. We're probably humming at 500 deals in a normal market, but we're still kind of at that 300 level. I'm the OP now of Westfield. I stepped out of the team leader role, became OP, bought more Boyd Brown out, and then I became the regional director when we finally got rid of Matt Green out of this place. Sadly, he's back, Bradley. And then really the last 5 years just been fun. I've been an investor since 2009, just buying rental properties, scraping together pennies, you know, to figure out how to put $1,000 down on something, move into it, or the BRRRR method, or seller financing. We really had to hustle to get our first 4 or 5 rentals. And then again, you blink, 7 years later, you have 200 grand equity in something, and you can roll that into a fourplex or commercial building or whatever. I went back to school in 2019, got my master's in real estate development from the University of Utah. And that kind of turned me into, I want to develop to, I'm a developer. So we've actually developed a bunch of stuff the last 3, 4, 5 years. We have just, me and Boyd have a grand slam down in Salem, Utah. So we have a master development about 250 acres that sucks until it doesn't suck. You just are putting money in, you're trying to figure out if you have a deal, and all of a sudden it, you know, works out. So that's good. And I'll reference a few of these things. That's why I'm telling you my bio as I go through here. But I also put a group together about 6 years ago. You might have met some of them at, you know, family reunion or some events, but we put a group together and launched Argentina for Keller Williams. So I own 25% of the master franchise down there in that country. I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did. I'm Duolingoing it every day on my treadmill. It's not clicking as much as I thought it would. But anyways, that's great. We have about 500 agents down there. We got 9 offices. This will be a big year for us. I think we're going to probably launch another 6-ish offices. But if you know anything about Argentina, it's crazy to learn about new economy, new taxation, new laws, you know, politics, all that. And so I'll reference that a little bit as we journey through this, because I've learned a whole paradigm shift, how awesome and how lucky and blessed we are to be in the United States as far as our real estate market, mortgage market, that type of stuff. So I've just done a lot of stuff. So again, I've been in the room with Gary Keller a lot of different ways, whether it's leadership, through my real estate team, whether I'm in trouble, and he's, just kidding. But I basically, one thing that I really love about Gary is, if he didn't go real estate, he would be a great professor. He's just a research machine. If you go to his office, he just has stacks of books all over. He's really good at just researching and determining what his model in life is for whatever it is, and then all of his research or learning beyond that is simply to either validate that he's got the right models or invalidate it. So even the MREA is just a simple thing that he was doing. Is just like, how do you go build a real estate team the best pathway, the best, and he just researched it, organized it. None of it was really his information. He just put it in a book. And then that was huge for us. Even a lot of our training, KWU, all that stuff has just been kind of what his natural, unique talents are. So I've tried to put together some courses. I'm working on a time course, how I view time, but this is just my money. These are basically things, the only way I like to teach is just from kind of what I've internalized and what I've experienced and how I behave. So I've kind of tried to look back the last 15 years of what's contributed to my success on the wealth building journey. And we're going to navigate through these 10 steps, okay? The reason it's 10 steps to 10 million, I think it is very possible if you abide by the science of wealth and the science of making money and keeping money, that you can doably 10x your net worth every decade. So that's why, the 10 million, when I grew up single mom, I was broke as a joke my whole life. Grew up never having the things that we really needed or wanted. My mom was awesome, but she just, she had kids so early on in life. And raising two kids, on a secretary job or something, was just hard, so a lot of my resilience come from the way I grew up, whether it was chasing and having goals to go get money, but it was also moving away from not having it, and life. Josh Stern lectures me all the time about moving the goalpost. Don't move your goalpost on your goals, but part of that is you just got to figure out what kind of life that you really want out there for you, your kids, your grandkids. And then how do you go build enough wealth that passive income can pay for that, so a lot of you probably have goals like that. So we're going to just journey through these. It'll make a lot more sense as we go through them. Some will be simple, some we can kind of have group discussion, and then really I might whiteboard a couple things and we can go from there. So we click on it again. The first one's really simple, but I always I probably held, I don't know, 5,000 recruiting appointments, 7,000 recruiting appointments when I was a team leader. And one of my favorite things was actually people that were interested in getting into real estate. I love recruiting high level people because those are the people that spoke my language, but like to see just the ambition of people wanting to change their life and change their career and just totally take that courageous leap into the business. But oftentimes I would tell people, you're not starting one business, you're starting two businesses. So you're going to go sell real estate, but then you're also starting your investment business, which there's still at least 70% of our companies that still haven't figured that out. They're still very, there's not enough people that are buying rentals and investment real estate and stuff. So that's why I enjoy teaching this, is just to hopefully create some energy around that. But first of all, I was an investor first when I got my real estate license, long before I actually fell in love with selling real estate. But part of that is when I'm like, if I want to go own a bunch of real estate, or I want to go, own some apartments or whatever, clearly my day job being in real estate as well just makes sense. So that's why I chose to do it. But either way, you have to just love what you do, and you just have to commit to it. So when people look at my life the last 5 years and they look at my org chart and all the different random things I'm doing, people are always wanting to take pictures and like, oh, I want this, I want this. But what they don't realize is that first 10, 15 years was just monotonously boring. If you zoomed in on my life on a day-to-day, week-to-week, or month-to-month thing, it's just I was just doing the same things that we tell people, but I probably just did it, and oftentimes people want to just jump in and diversify, and they want to do a bunch of things, and what they don't realize is they're self-sabotaging their success from getting momentum in something, and that's a little bit of our generation challenge we have right now. We always, the older I get, the more we can blame everything on the young people in society. But that's part of it. I grew up on, I've said this before, but I grew up on Ninja Turtle 30-minute TV episodes when I was eating my cereal before going to school. So like society trained me to have a 30-minute attention span back then. The generation after me, even my little brother that's like 12, 13 years younger than me, he grew up on YouTube. You know what the average length of a YouTube video is? 7 minutes, 7 minutes. And then my kids are growing up on what?
TikTok.
China, TikTok, average TikTok videos, what? A minute? No, it's probably like 30 seconds, 20 seconds or something. So it's just, we're conditioning people to just like expect faster results, better results, without putting in the work. And that's part of it. You just got to go crush something for 10 years. And I really wanted to be an excellent team leader. I wanted to be really good at recruiting. And the fact that I was willing to commit my whole soul to that for that time period is what I owe all my success to, So part of it is you just got to commit to a job. And Gary always says, don't let your time do the heavy lifting of your burnout. Everybody gets burned out. Like every 2 weeks I'm burned out, or whatever your time period is. But that's the challenge that oftentimes I have agents come to me like, yeah, I want to talk to you about a business I want to start or whatever. And the successful agent that makes $200,000 a year comes in, they're like, I'm thinking about starting a window washing company. I'm not going to do window washing. I'm just going to manage it. I'm like, there's no way you're not going to get sucked into that business. And what they're doing is they're now swapping their time on highly productive income hours selling real estate, now swapping it into something else that's just going to distract them and just hurt them, and that's why you have to let your money do the heavy lifting of your boredom or your complacency or whatever, not your time. So just spend your time doing what you're the very best at. Money will be a natural byproduct of that. And I think Quantum Leap, we talked about Quantum Leap in here a little bit, but that's what even Quantum Leap is, just like digging into your soul of what you want, how you're going to get it, what your unique abilities are, and just kind of dive deeper. And even in selling real estate, what can you even get better at and specialize that's going to just naturally increase your income? Because that's one of the things for me is I was sitting in real estate classes. I did it live back then. Luckily the instructor let a bunch of different companies come in and present about their company. And when Keller Williams came in and presented to our class, I just got the initial feeling that the bad A's and the top producers were at Keller Williams. But I remember an old lady asked, Jimmy Rex was one of the guys that came into my class. One of the ladies that was in our class raised her hand, which I thought at that point was a very forward question, but Jimmy was happy to answer it. But she's like, hey, how much money did you make in real estate last year? And Jimmy said, I made $580,000 last year. And it just blew my mind. I'm like, holy crap, like I didn't know it was possible to make that kind of money. So I just chose a job, which is on real estate, that just has that income potential that could potentially speed up your journey. Do I believe that you can have just a total normal job, just an admin or just a nurse or an accountant or whatever and still build wealth? Sure. But again, typically there's some ceilings on your ability to go make an income and then what portion of that can go invest. And that's why you in this room, there's nothing stopping you from building as much wealth as you choose to build. Okay. But again, we just live 99% of society just spends all their money, so you have to be willing to pay yourself first. And we'll kind of go through that. Okay. De-weeding. So that's it. So just, commit mastery in a job, think bigger, raise your income and go get some money. And when I talk about my kids once because I have some teenagers now who know everything, which is so fantastic for me. They know everything. They don't listen to me anymore. But when I think about money and my children, I'm like, I got to simplify it. And what are the most important principles I can teach them? And the one thing that I've kind of like zoned in on was when they make $1, whether it's through commission on chores or they're going to start having jobs, if they can have one thing that I pass on to them early in their life, $1 does not mean $1 to spend. $1 means 50 cents to spend. So every dollar they make in their life, I take 50 cents of it. And we started with savings account. Now we're starting to teach them a little bit about investing. But I'm like, if they can just learn to live off half of what they make the rest of their life, they're probably destined to be okay. But the problem is, a lot of times, I've said this before, but if life was all about just gathering the right factual information and then us knowing it, we'd all be multimillionaires and we'd all have six packs, right? But so much of life is an emotional journey. And if you do my family history, the Christensen family tree is the most paycheck to paycheck family tree in the history of the United States. Just kidding, I don't know, but it's pretty close. I have a lot of great family members. They're all just awesome. A lot of blue collar workers, a lot of construction workers, city workers. I have a ton of cops in my family, which they're all just good people. Like if you had a flat tire, my family would be the family that pulled over to help you, but they're just not great with money. So when I started progressing in my career of real estate, I had to dive in and reprogram the way that I thought about money. Even when I went and told my father the first time, somewhere around 23, 24 or something, that Clay and I were going to buy our first rental property, he went on to lecture me for about an hour and a half on all the reasons why owning a rental property is an awful idea. And being that young, still looking up to your parents quite a bit, like I was shaken, and he almost convinced me not to do it. And I had to leave my dad, and I had to go back to the environment of Keller Williams, and kind of re-energize me, and I had to put those thoughts out, and then I ended up buying it. But there's a lot of people out there that want to continue their family, programming on that way. So I eventually just stopped talking to my dad about money, and then 10 years later, I came back and said, all right, I own 10 rows now, we've got anything to say, So, de-weeding. Here's just a bunch of random things that I pulled. There's all sorts of pathways and steps, you know Dave Ramsey, kind of his 7 baby steps. Even here's Tony Robbins stuff. Here's even when I pulled these, kind of what percent of our country falls within the classes, super rich 1%, 5% the upper middle class, 46% middle class, 40% working class, 12% the lower class poverty. So the question I pose, when you think about wealth building being so much more of an emotional journey or a mental journey, I want to talk. I was just Googling my heart out one day to find some answers on that, and Brian Tracy wrote this article that I thought was a great one. So I'm just going to read this. So why is it that people don't become wealthy? In a country like ours, with the opportunities that we have, why is it that so few people retire financially independent? And I eventually found the answers. Here is what I consider to be the 5 reasons why people don't become wealthy. The first one is at the top of the list is it never occurs to them. The average person has grown up in a family where he has never met or known anyone who is wealthy. He goes to school and socializes with people who are not wealthy. He works with people who are not wealthy. He has a reference group or a social circle outside of work who are not wealthy. He has no role models who are wealthy. If this has happened to you throughout your formative years up to the age of 20, you can grow up and become a fully mature adult in our society. And it may never occur to you that it's just as possible for you to become wealthy as for anyone else. This is why people who grow up in homes where their parents are wealthy are much more likely to become wealthy as adults than people who grow up in homes where their parents are not. So for the first reason why people don't become wealthy is that it never occurs to them that it's possible for them. And of course, it never occurs to them that then they never take any steps necessary to make it reality. I think I got to probably 23 or 24 years old before I can for sure say that I've met a network. Just the way I grew up, the neighborhood, the school I went to, like you just naturally associate with the people that are around you, and who you associate with matters, and that's why I just have such a passion for KW. It's just because KW was really that first environment for me that put me in a new world to raise my thinking. You just don't know what you don't know until someone kind of helps you or shows you. The second reason is making a decision. The second reason most people don't become wealthy is that they never decide to. Even if a person reads a book, attends a lecture, or associates with people who are financially successful, nothing changes until he makes a decision to do something different. Even if it occurs to a person that he could become wealthy, if he just did certain things in a specific way, if he doesn't decide to take the first step, he ends up staying as he is. If you continue to do what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you've always got. The primary reason for underachievement and failure is that the great majority of people don't decide to be successful. They never make a firm, unequivocal commitment or definite decision that they are going to become wealthy. They mean to, they intend to, they hope to, they're going to someday. They wish and hope and pray that they will make a lot of money, but they never decide, I am going to do it. This decision is an essential first step to becoming financially independent. Even the first couple of years I was in KW, I was giving myself the mantra of like, oh, wouldn't that be great? I'd meet people that had a bunch of investments or they're making a ton of money, or I went to my first family reunion event. I'm like, holy crap, like that's so crazy. Wouldn't that be great? And then over a period of time, I started meeting some of these people or having more, close interaction with them. And some of them were just so simple that I'm like, you make $800,000. Like, you're like, if you can do it, I can do it. Then your confidence starts building. And then eventually just be like, I'm going to do it, and that's part of it. You just eventually have to make the decision. Procrastination is like the death of wealth building. Maybe tomorrow. The reason that don't become wealthy is procrastination. People always have a good reason not to begin doing what they know they need to do to achieve financial independence. It is always the wrong month, the wrong season, or the wrong year. Business conditions in their industry are no good, or they may be too good. The market isn't right. They may have to take a risk or give up their security maybe next year. There always seems to be a reason to procrastinate. As a result, they keep putting it off month by month, year by year until it's too late. Even if it has occurred to a person that they can become wealthy, they have made a decision to change. Procrastination will push all their plans into the indefinite future. Next. The fourth reason that people retire poor is what economists call the inability to delay gratification. The great majority of people have an irresistible temptation to spend every single penny they make and whatever else they can borrow or buy in credit. If you cannot delay gratification and discipline yourself to refrain from spending everything you make, you cannot become wealthy. If you cannot practice budgeting as a lifelong habit, it will be impossible for you to achieve financial independence. If you cannot save money, the seeds of greatness are not in you. There's one thing that I've done well. I just committed to delaying gratification for 10 years. I was a 35-year-old multimillionaire living in a $250,000 townhome. Even when we had all our kids, we had 3 high bunk beds in our basement that fit all the kids before we finally built our house. And part of that is just society's against us on that. We're not only keeping up with the Joneses, we're keeping up with so many people, especially with social media. And 90% of people on social media probably are the fake millionaires, right? Anyways. Take the long view. Here's the last one. The fifth reason that people retire poor is perhaps as important, if not more important than all the others. It is lack of time perspective. In a study by Harvard University, he wanted to know how you could predict whether an individual or family was going to move upward one or more socioeconomic groupings and be wealthier in the next generation than they were this generation. All his research brought him to a single factor that he concluded was more accurate than any other in predicting success in America. They call it time perspective. This was defined as the amount of time that you take into consideration when planning your day-to-day activities and when making important decisions in your life. Time perspective referred to how far you projected into the future when you decided what you were going to do or not do in the present. Even when I was choosing my career, there was a bunch of options. I could have gone door-to-door sales. I could have tried to figure out how to start a tech company or whatever. I didn't want to work as hard as to do door-to-door sales. Number two, I realized I wasn't smart enough to start a technology company, so I just felt like the long game in real estate was the most probable, predictable path that I could build a high net worth. And that part of it is, again, people just think it should happen faster, but true wealth, it takes time to do it. Time value of money, just compound interest, it works. So here's, in that same thing, here's 5 habits that will keep you from building wealth. Failing to stick to a budget. Who does a budget every month for your house? Raise your hand. Okay. Who wants to do a budget? Okay. What about carrying too much debt lifestyle? Yeah. Yeah, even credit card debt is just zipped up, right? Not investing, especially if you feel like you're behind other peer age people. People just think it's just got to be big to start. A lot of times it's just such a little incremental thing. The first 5 rental properties that Clay and I bought, we just had no money and we had to figure out how to do a deal with $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, or even just our commission. And that's why the majority of our first 5, 6 rentals was owner occupied, seller financing. We did a couple successful burrs where we built in, the equity for the down payment. Number 4 is investing too conservatively. We'll talk about that later. And then growing complacent in your professional life. Here's some really high level ones that Gary put out there. What keeps people from being a millionaire? The need to visit their capital. They don't trust the assets their wealth is in will hold value. I bought Bitcoin in 2017. I think it was like $1,000, $2,000. It is now $70,000. I bought and sold, over the last 7 years so successfully. I've officially made $0 in Bitcoin. But that's my problem. Is as soon as I run it up a little bit, I'm like, oh, that's cash sitting there. I got to convert that back to dollars, right? And then I'd buy it again at a higher price, and then it would tank. Like, oh, I better get my money out before I lose it, and then I'll pull it out. It was just so easy to trade. And that part of that need to visit the capital, because I didn't view Bitcoin as a true asset, or it's going to hold stuff. They're a paper millionaire versus a cash flow millionaire. Even as the market kind of tanked the last couple of years, when you run these market centers on like 1-2% profit margins, it is hard, so when the market drops, it's easy to evaporate some of the profit out of the businesses I own. And that's where I realized, instead of going so heavy on equity and real estate, maybe mixing it up in lending or some private money that might not have as many benefits, but it's a higher cash flowing. So even the next 10 years, I'm going to do a little bit better blend on that. The urge to be liquid, they think cash is real and everything else isn't real. Argentina is the #2 country on the planet on just physical dollars, US dollar stored. You're the first, obviously. Argentina is the second. 93% of their homes are bought cash. Like they're just such a big cash country because they don't trust their own currency and their own economy. But a lot of times the urge to be liquid or having that number in your bank account or whatever can be one of a catastrophic things. Debt, the way to debt, even going into the recession, people that were just chasing the dollar and they became over leveraged, like it just, people that had 5, 10, $20 million net worth toppled it all because of just how heavy the debt burden was on them. The need or urge to live high on the hog before their cash flow can support them that way. Every good market run, I always determine that off on how many nice cars were in the parking lot of a real estate office, right? They don't see people as an investment or an asset. If you wanna go fast, go alone. If you wanna go far, you gotta go with people. But when you're OCD and perfectionistic like I am, like you just want to control everything, and I've had to figure out how to get over that. And my biggest assets are in life are a lot of my leadership that I've got in the companies. And those take just as much time and attention to hone that skill set and how to bring them into your world as it does to go out and invest and make money. The next one is they don't have a written wealth building plan they trust. There's been a bunch of college studies on that, Harvard, Yale. It's high. It's like an 80% higher likelihood that you'll accomplish your goals simply by having them written down, which is crazy. They spend more than they make, or they spend all they make, and then they don't study the money or rules of investing. There is a science to gravity, there is a science to money, and you can choose whether or not to learn that science, but it's there. You get Marcus to buy a new clicker. All right, now we're gonna talk about growth. So delay lifestyle growth mindset, think of a million, time value of money. There is an often told story that when Albert Einstein was once asked what mankind's greatest invention was, he replied, compound interest. There's even one claim that Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Here's just a good example. Here's years, 1 all the way down to 30 years, and on the top axis, you got 0 to 20%. You go save $100 a month at 0% interest, you're gonna end up with $1,200, right? You do it for 30 years, you're gonna have $36,000. But again, you go get a 20% return and simply put $100 a month into your investment machine that gets 20%, $2.33 million, okay? Does anybody know what Warren Buffett's average return of his net worth increase every year is? 22%, 22%. He just did over 50 years. Had he even retired at 65, like most 65-year-olds, nobody knew who he was. Like 90-something% of his wealth came after the age of 65 because of that compound interest principle. And that's also why the rich get richer. You know, that's part of it. Is our world is set up to help wealthy people keep their money, and that compound interest just continues to grow. And it's I always use that as you know, to go from fat Johnny to fit Johnny versus just trying to stay fit Johnny. Way less effort to stay fit than it is to go from fat to fit. Same thing, when you're trying to go build your net worth, that 0 to even 500,000, 200,000, 700,000 is 10 times harder than going from $1 million to 2 million. And that's once you have momentum and once you have a little bit of that, you know, push, it's easier that you can put less effort to continue to grow it. And that's why if you could even delay gratification and live a handful of these principles for a decade, you will start a snowball that it's almost sometimes harder to blow it up than it would be to keep it going, right? Time value money. I downloaded this fancy calculator once when I was in college, and there's all these fancy buttons on here, but there's only one thing that I actually know how to do with this calculator, and I learned how to calculate time value of money. So if you don't know how to do that, you need to hurry and quickly figure it out and do YouTube. It's just these top numbers. N is the number of periods. So I always just do years. You can do months if you want, but I just keep it simple. So 20 years, I over year is interest per year. So for 20 years, I could average an 8% return on my money. If I started with $0, you know, before that 20 years, and then even say I went out and made 300 grand and I was willing to invest a third of that and put 100 grand into my investment world, that I delayed that for 20 years, I'd end up with $4.9 million. I have played with those 5 buttons, you know, just calculating different things, legitimately 5 to 10,000 times. And it just helps you calculate and just get your mind, you know, in what the dollar now could mean in the future, which helps me make better decisions now. Like people, when they go buy a new car, 99% of people just go buy it and they finance all of it and they're like, sweet, I got a new car. But when you work your butt off and save that $50,000 to go buy that new car, It is so much harder to buy a new car with your own money than it is with your credit, right? And that's part of it. When you get ahead of the game a little bit, your balance sheet and your home P&L or your budget, those two help you make all the right decisions. But even say right here, say you started at $1 million, 8% a year, 20 years, 100 grand a year, same numbers, 9.6 million. Even here, 20 years at a 22% interest rate, you started with $1 million. When you're 40, you get to 60, 100 grand a year, you're committed to investing, you're gonna end up with $82 million. So I just keep playing with this, keep playing with this. You can put money in, you can take money out, you start with something, you not start with someone. But again, one of the major variables is that interest a year, right? So part of that is every year I just say, all right, how much money can I make in life? How much can I invest into my investment side of the world that I'm not gonna touch? And how do I just get the highest rate of return for that money? Simple 3 numbers, that's it. Again, growth. That being said, here are some simple ways to help you become financially literate: hit books, read magazines, online publishers, use financial management tools, listen to podcasts, take financial literacy course, teach math on, read government resources, blah, blah, blah. You just have to commit to financial literacy. And again, I grew up just never wanting to live like I grew up, you know, so a lot of my motivation just came to me craving the knowledge to go out and learn how money works. I don't listen to a lot of music. I'm listening to financial podcasts. You name any money book, I've probably read it once, at least twice. Any money class out there, I probably could. I'm obsessed with learning about it. And if you want to go build wealth, you have to be willing to dedicate time to doing that, right? The whole 10,000 hour mastery kind of scenario. Okay, now let's talk about P&L, balance sheet, cash flow management, and buckets. This comes out of Gary's Quantum Leap, but there's only 2 kinds of capital. You work for money. You are swapping your time, energy for money, right? A lot of that's just called earned income, or your money works for you. Either way, those are the 2 ways that money flows into your life. We call it cash flow. There's only 4 things you can do with your money. You can spend it, donate it, save it, invest it, right? Most of the world does what? Spend it all. I am no different than anybody else. If it hits my bank account, I am a magician and poof, it'll disappear, right? The only way that I can do it is just somehow I get that money out before it hits my bank account, and then I just have some of those habits. So you might just have percentage buckets for whatever those are. I'm always a big fan of donating 10% of my income. Invest, I started at 5, 10, 15%, but one of the habits that I've been living for 10 years is 30% of every dollar I make moves to my investment. And every single month, every single week, every single year, I'm trying to stay as close to that 30% of my income go over to my investment program. Saving, again, future savings for couches and all that should still just be in your spending budget. This is just your emergency reserves. Even once you've built whatever adequate emergency reserves, normally it should just dump down to investing at that point, right? Balance sheet and personal budget. So here is just an example of personal budget that I use. I track all my income in, and I have basically 2 categories. I have my earned income. What am I swapping time and energy for? That income, or what is unearned or passive income that's coming off capital assets, or my money's making money, right? And then again, tithe, saving, and investing comes right out on top. I usually try to track my percentages, and then everything else is just my expenses. And again, whether I have 5,000 or 50,000 hit my personal account, it really will just poop in lifestyle. But a lot of people will just increase their lifestyles, their income goes up before they actually take money off the top. So housing, you can figure out how you ever want to do it, but your personal P&L, you have to do that on a monthly basis. And most people, they have the desire to do it, or they may have a general instinct how much money they spend, but there's only 3 rules to tracking money. It's just like, you gotta create a budget, right? Where do you want to direct your money before you do it? And then number 2, you've got to figure out some sort of tracking system, you know, whether it's a software program or spreadsheet. And number 3 is you actually just have to live in the categories that you predictated before the month starts. And then balance sheet. So who right here, let's even say 1 month out of the year, you did a personal budget at the end of the month. You know how much money came in your life, how much money came out. Who in here does a personal budget or has a couple times this year? Okay. Balance sheet. Balance sheet is a whole nother chart, right? That is just keeping track of all the things that have value in your life, businesses, rentals, your Pokemon collection that Eden has, whatever you got, minus your liabilities, people you owe money to, is your net worth, right? So those are simply 2 documents for the last 15 years, I can't remember the last time I didn't do it. I have done these two for 15 years. Like, one of the stories I tell is there was an NFL football game that was just intense. You know, everybody's in the stadium. It was like within 7 points or something, the power goes out in the stadium. The power goes out in the stadium, and it was so crazy to see the video of this. Within about 3 minutes of people not knowing what the score is, the entire stadium stopped paying attention to the game and just started chit-chatting with everybody around it. Like, if you don't know what the score is in your life, how are you ever going to be engaged in it? So balance sheet wise, when my number on the bottom was a negative number, I didn't love doing this. But again, when you start making progress and you actually start climbing the ranks of that, it gets easier and easier and more entertaining to do. But once you just get these set up, my world's pretty big. These two, just to boil it all down to a simple balance sheet and a budget for me, I'm usually about 15 to 20 minutes a month. That's it. So part of just getting organized is the pain. Once organized, just to keep it rolling is the other thing. I just spent 3 days in the Tax and Legal 360 class with Mark Kohler, Matt Sorensen. And again, I learned a lot from them, but the most simple basic thing was what they call the trifecta. So on the left side is your S corporation. This is your ordinary income path. This is where you are swapping time, money, and energy for your income. This is your real estate commission, any short-term things like flips, even land developments or whatever. There's 2 points to this. This is your liability protection, and it's also the way that taxation happens. And there's also some estate planning and legacy passing of why this is a structure. A corporation or an LLC with the IRS getting the S election from it turns it basically into an S corporation. The way that it's taxed. So your net income, you're dividing between distributions and salary, and it really minimizes payroll taxes by having an entity. I always say if you're making at least $30,000 in a year, you need to go set up your S corporation to flow your commission. Okay. But again, there's this giant freaking wall right here, which is your liability protection from your long-term capital assets. This is your long-term rental properties or things that your money's making money. That's your right side. And then both of those flow down to the family trust. It's a revocable trust upon death. Okay. This wall. So when I see people flowing their real estate commission in the same entity that they own their first rental property, it just blows my mind. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. So this is the basic. And once you got this set up, when you expand your world to another 100 businesses, it still is this trifecta foundation. My goal has always simply just make as much money as I can over here. And then every month I'm flowing 30% of income over to my asset long-term holding side. And as soon as I have enough money for my next investment, boom, I'll do it. And there's been phases of my life where I'll find a deal and I got to figure out how to pay for it. And there's been other times where I'll have a little bit of money in the bank account. I'm like, I got to go find a deal, right? But either way, I just always committed to that. Once I make passive income over here, my rental properties cash flowing or whatever, I never bring that back over here. I never bring it down to my life. That's one of the other things is when I make income off of the money I move over here, I'm not going to touch that for 20 years. So sometimes I see people make progress. They'll go sell $100,000. They'll go buy their first rental property that nets them $200 a month or whatever. And then again, they're just floating that down to their personal life and then poof, it disappears, which is not a bad thing depending on what your lifestyle choice is. But if you could delay that and let that sucker snowball, I bought in rental properties simply from cash flow of other rental properties, let alone when you take the equity out of one and then you multiply it into 2 properties or whatever, because now you can put that equity to work. Here's out of the KW Wealth community. This is Brett Tanner's, flow of his money is he has what's called a wealth coordination account. All of his money flows into a wealth coordination account. He then will move it down to the war chest, but family checking, future spending, but then he takes off the top and he's got his investment strategies of real estate, flips, I don't know what that means. But anyway, just another way of looking at it, of just coordinating your money and then distributing to your personal account the funds that you actually want to spend. Okay. We don't talk about this, but you guys get debt. Debt is such an enemy to your wealth building. And a lot of times that has to do with you scaling down your lifestyle to not let debt fund it. But it's so crazy when discretionary spending starts shrinking the last 2 years. Again, our credit card debt just went shoot. If you go to my market report, we got a bunch of stats on that. It's crazy. But you guys know that, so we'll kind of carry on past that. So let's talk about investment strategy, passive income, net worth. Has anybody read the Cash Flow Quadrant from Kiyosaki? Yeah, it was one of the first finance books that just kind of it clicked, you know. I actually have probably been all four of these all the time. I've been an employee for 15 years, but part of my world is I'm just trying to move as much of my life over to the B and the I. If not, eventually I just want to live in that investment. If I could just wake up every day and do two things, it'd be just working on my own investment deals and then just teaching other people how to just copy what I've learned and done in my life, like go out and train. Like I would be the happiest version of myself. But a lot of times it's a journey on those. And for me, the journey is just, here is your chart, the path of passive income. Where did your money come from? Those people start here, or this is where they're at, is 100% of their lifestyle is coming from earned income. You have to go make the money, and then that's what you live your life off. And then eventually you start tracking your passive or earned income. But this is my goal, is just eventually I want to have enough passive income that I'm solely living off that, right? Court calls that FU money. Here's the bottom part of that quantum leap thing. But you only have two basic positions of where do you invest your money. You're either going to own stuff with it, or you're going to give it to someone or lend it to someone to go do something or invest it for you, right? There's two basic positions out of that. There's a passive side, and then there's an active. So passive means you're not really involved in it. Active means you are active, in those investment decisions. So even on the lend and own, you got money market, CDs, bonds, T-bills. They control it. You can own stocks, REITs, mutual funds. Over here, lending, owner financing, private lending, that's where you're active, you're controlling it, and then owning stuff is businesses and real estate. And somewhere early in my career, I got obsessed with just this side, owning things. Where do you think the majority of wealth in the world is built? Owning businesses and real estate, right? Can you get rich through these? Maybe. Like you have to save a lot of money, because a lot of times CDs, bonds, money markets, I've got some money in those, they're anywhere from like 2 to 4, maybe 5%. But when you have inflation at 2, 3, 4, 5%, you're actually looking at maybe a 1, 2%, if not like a deflation of that. Stocks, REITs, again, 93% of mutual funds outperform just the S&P 500 index. So a lot of the mutual funds, the REITs, the stocks, I put money into it, and then after a year, 5 years, whatever, I get my things. I'm like, I had that much money in there, and I made $6, the last 3 years. The best example is my simple IRA. We formed a simple IRA at the Red Sign team level for Clay and I. Traditional Roth, you can put like $6 grand or something in. A simple IRA, when it's a company directed one, we could do 12,500 a year. So we personally, Clay and I maxed it out through our team for 4 straight years, 12,500. Every month we're putting $1,000 in each of ours. It is with a company that they have to manage it. So it's put into like age-based, risk-based, mutual funds and ETFs and stuff like that. This was probably somewhere around 2015 to 2019-ish. 12,500 times 4 is 48, it's $50,000. So I specifically my own money, I put $50,000 over 4 years into the simple IRA in one of the best run-ups of the stock market. They kept sending me 60% that I was getting returned. After 4 years, I logged back into my simple IRA. How much do you think my balance was after 4 years of a great stock market with me having put $50,000 in it? 75, 105, 2 million, 3 million, like $51,000. I made $1,000 on $1,000 in a grade. And again, I started digging into it, and the return percentages they were dictating to me were basically puff ones, because all their fees and crap, their yacht payments and their private jet payments were coming out of the money I was making. I don't own a yacht, right? They own yachts. So that's when I'm like, screw this. Same time period, I had bought a bunch of rentals, and my dollar turned into $10. Like my returns were astronomical. So that was one of the decisions I made to self-direct my retirement, so I could actually control what it was being invested in. So I just self-directed my retirement back, 4, 5, 6 years ago, and just other things that I'm doing, I'll just put money in for my self-directed retirement, and I'm averaging a 30-40% ROI of my money in my retirement program. So again, once you start gaining confidence in your money path and your money skill set, you controlling it always ends up usually making more money. Like the farther my money's gotten away from me, the harder it's been for me to make money. And I've dabbled in everything and I've lost money in almost everything besides the things that I can control.
Your passive sounds ridiculous. I mean, it makes me feel better about this.
Yeah.
That was a really good.
And depending on your risk tolerance and how active you want to be in your life, I think part of it to get a nest egg going, you have to be extremely active in controlling the destiny of your money. You have a real estate profession. Why would you not be putting your money in real estate right now? Yes, there should be a diversification period. Yes, there should be like a leverage period of your life. But when you're trying to build something, it's really hard to do it with other people controlling it. Even just stock market sectors, these are the 11 main global industry classification. You got energy, materials, industrials, utilities, healthcare, financials, consumer. I'm on the journey to start the process of diversification now and trying to get into some non-correlated assets and stuff like that. But again, I've just lived in real estate just because I was willing to put the time to being great in real estate. Here's even just portfolio distribution. A lot of Tony Robbins' latest books, like The Holy Grail, Money, Unbreakable. He's got a 3-part series of all his money books. One of them specifically talks about the all-weather portfolio. Just where's your wealth? Where's your investment capital at? Here is Brett Tanner's that he showed us the other day. He wants 5% treasury bills, 5% life insurance, all that, businesses, energy, hard money loans, blah, blah, blah. But again, until you actually start having at least a chunk, it feels counterproductive to me to try to like diversify. I got a lot of young agents, even in the Horm office, that are in their 20s that maybe have like $20, $30, $50,000 of investment, net worth. And they're wanting to just spread it all on a little crypto and some stocks and some here or here. And what that did is prevent them from owning another rental property, right? And I'm like, you know what? Until you get to like 300, 500, maybe $1 million, it should just be all in real estate. Especially if you jump on my market report, you look at the net, like the economics of Utah, like my money is on the state the next 10 to 15 years. Like we are so uniquely positioned with how economically we've been conservatively. Like you look at how underbuilt we are, you look at just the flood of people. We always blame the Californians, but just people moving in, the net migration. We're what, 40,000 homes underbuilt in the state. Like you're put your money anywhere for a 10-year period. Like my money's in real estate in Utah. So just use that to your advantage. If the prices are high, you might have to be creative. We can talk about some of those things, but here's even some I found the other day that I threw in here, but even age-based recommended net worth growth rates by age. When you're in your 20s, your 30s, like you should have a very high expectation of your growth rate, primarily because you got nothing to lose. You can have a high risk, so you can put it in more risky things. But when your net worth is lower and you're hustling to make money and then you're taking part of the earned income and you're putting it into your net worth, it can almost like fictitiously boost up those, my net worth is $100,000. I go make $100,000 earned income. I live off 50 and I put that other 50 into my net worth. I'm now 150. My net worth just grew 50%, right? So even your ability to transition earned income into your net worth is very helpful when you're young. But you get past $1 million, it's really hard to move that by putting part of your earned income in it, right? But as you get older, you start shifting your risk rating, blah, blah, blah. That's just an example. But even here's your target net worth on annual expenses, maybe kind of benchmark where you should be. If your household lives off $120,000 a year, $10,000 a month, all right, somewhere around 50 years old, you should probably have 20x times 120,000, right? What would that be? 2.4 million bucks, something like that. Let's talk about currency. Who likes having cash? Who likes having money in the bank? Yeah. So we spend our entire life working for money. We're obsessed with dollars. We're obsessed with that number in a bank account. But it is actually one of the worst places to have net worth is sitting in currency. I'll talk about that. So number one is Adam Smith back in the day said the problem with fiat money is that it rewards the minority that can handle money, but fools the generation that has worked and saved money. Fiat money, a government-issued currency that is not backed by a physical commodity such as gold or silver, but rather by the government that issued it. Now this guy, on August 15, 1971, President Nixon announced for the nation, you know what he did? Took it off the gold standard, right? And even when they announced that, do you know that it was supposed to be a 1 or 2 year temporary removal of the gold standard? Who would have guessed the government doesn't follow through on what they said, right? Here is cumulative inflation of the US dollar. Right here, right when he made that announcement, look at the skyrocket of the cumulative inflation. Every time you go off a fiat, off a commodity-based currency, when it's not backed by anything, they start getting addicted to printing, spending, debt, all those things, and just look at that skyrocket of just the last couple of years. Here's the national debt, again, 1970-ish, right there, 412, boom, same thing, just print, spend, debt. Here is 1971. If you had $1 million in 1971 because of that cumulative inflation, that same $1 million, you would have to have $7.7 million this year to compete with that $1 million 50 years ago. Or even you flip flop that. If you have $1 million right now, it's the same as $129,000 then, right? Paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value 0. $100, boom, basically over time, that's 70 years. That's what $100 turns into something. So if you have an obsession with having your savings, money under your mattress or whatever, the recommendation is you've got to get it out of dollars and you've got to put it into great, solid assets. I've listened to probably 100 podcasts the last 2 years that is obsessed with just communicating. You've got to get your money into assets that will sustain beyond the cycles of the economy, okay? One of the cool things about owning a rental property, we'll go through those benefits again, just to remind you why real estate's awesome. But here's a 30-year loan. Okay, so here's a 30-year loan, mortgage rate 7.37. Say your annual payment is $1,200. We always view inflation as a bad thing, but this is the 5th benefit that I always talk about owning real estate, is when you lock into a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, over time, this is basically annual inflation adjusted payments. This is the payment, what it feels like then, 30 years later, it feels, because of inflation, it'll feel like $285. So this is one of the 2 things that blow my Argentine's mind. Is number 1 is a mortgage market. Like I said, 93 to 97%, depending on the year, are cash transaction technology. They just don't have a banking system. And part of that is we are one of like 2 countries on the planet that have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage product. Like, it's insane. Like, I don't know how the banks can still make money on that, but you look at all of our underlying mortgages that we've kept, since the last 2 years, it's crazy on that. But again, that's where inflation starts to play in our benefit, because our money is held in that rental property versus cash just deflating. Some multi-dimensional asset classes, blah, blah. But let's talk about rental properties. I know you've probably seen this, but again, let's walk through an example. The 4 benefits. I usually will teach for an hour and a half, and this is usually the only thing that people remember is the 4 major benefits of owning a property. And if you've seen this, you've got to get really good at this, at communicating this to your clients, your family, to everybody, why investing in real estate is awesome. So the first one's appreciation, right? Appreciation, we have cash flow. We have debt pay down, and we have tax, okay? So say right now we go buy a condo for $300,000, we put $60,000 down, our mortgage is $240,000, okay? I'm gonna need a calculator. Who could be my calculator? Maybe calculator, Bradley, you do my calculator, okay. $300,000 price, $60,000 is their down payment. Clearly, there's more creative ways of doing that. If you don't have a down payment, I could totally just skew these numbers to your benefit. But $60,000 is what we're actually investing. Our mortgage is going to be $240,000. Okay. Appreciation. What's the average appreciation in the last 30 years in the United States? 4 to 5%. Okay. What has it been in Utah the last 10, 15 years?
20.
Yeah, it's 8, 9-ish%. So predictably, the last 30 to 50 years is just 4% appreciation. That's crazy, right? And the whole point of a mortgage, the leverage component, when I go through our rental analysis with my Argentines, they're just so mad that I live in the United States and they don't, because they have to put so much cash into a property that it skews the return. So we can go put 20% down payment on something, but we gain 100% of the benefit of the asset class, right? So if I go put $60,000 in Apple goes up 4% a year, 5% a year, or whatever, I'm only gaining that appreciation on the cash I invested, right? Clearly, we know with real estate, even though you only put 60 grand down, we are getting appreciation on the entire value of the purchase price, which is just crazy. What other asset can you go do that? You put only 20% of the investment down, but you're getting 100% of the value of it. Crazy, right? So let's even just say, 5% right now. Utah's been 8 to 9%. What would you predict the next thing in Utah be? I have a really hard time thinking that it's gonna be as low as 4 or 5%. I just don't understand how because the Fed's probably gonna get propelled to lower rates before they even want to choose to lower rates, right? But again, what would happen to our real estate market right now if rates drop down to 5%? Be insane. Everybody would be calling me like, Jonny, I need to get out of the business because it sucks being a realtor again, right? Like just the multi offers and just the speed at which the market goes. I don't know how Utah isn't 7, 8, 9% on average the next 10 years. Like, I get that we have an affordability crisis, but like, what is the logical reason that we're going to do to solve it? So 5%. Okay, so 5% appreciation in 1 year. Your $300,000 property after 1 year times 5% turns into what?
15,000 bucks.
Yep. Oops. 15,000. So $15,000, just a simple appreciation of 5%. Okay, 15,000 divided by your investment capital of 60,000 is what? This one's easy. 25%. Just appreciation, being able to leverage with a mortgage, we already have a 25% ROI of our money. What if the market actually goes up 10% like it has? 10%, that 300,000 turns into 330 now, right? 330,000 divided by 60,000 is even 50%. What if you did a 10%? What if you did a 5%? What if you owner occupied it? What if you did a BRRRR? What if you seller finance, right? There's several properties that I can't even calculate because the percent on what I put into it is like an infinity number, okay? The other thing that I don't calculate in here is what happens when you have enough equity. Like my Provo house, we did a BRRRR on in 2012. We bought it. It was a piece of junk, 90,000. We had to just gut everything, yard everything. We put 50,000 bucks into it. It was $140,000 all into it. Just this little house. We put all the sweat equity. We put it in. We still hired contractors to do a lot of the work. We pulled out an appraisal on it. It was $180,000. We were able to do a cash out refinance, pulled out $140,000 mortgage, paid off our hard money that paid for the house and all the fix up. $140,000 mortgage, we had $40,000 built in equity. So we had a BRRRR method. So once we finished that process, we were $0 in. So clearly $0 investment, you're just gonna have weird returns. But 7 years later, we looked up, we had about $200 and something thousand equity in there that we had put $0 in. We said, hey, that $200,000+ is only getting us like $200 net cash flow of it. So it kind of felt like trapped equity, which some of you may have. We made that decision to cash it out, 1031 it into a fourplex. We bought $1 million fourplex, 4 units. That $200,000 ended up being our basically our 25% down payment. We have 25% equity in it, and now our cash flow. Not only are we appreciating on $1 million versus like a $350,000 value, we were now ended up cash flow like $1,000 a month from rolling it into a fourplex. So when you even talk about going from the greenhouse to the hotel, or you go into multiple properties, I don't even know how to calculate that because it's just like another infinity return, right? Cash flow, $240,000 mortgage is what right now? Realtors. 240,000.
I don't need houses that are selling.
I have under contract of a $300,000 condo right now, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath down in
So would that be?
I don't know. Basically, I'm gonna get 1950. I have probably 7, 8 condos that are all around 1850 to 2000 right now for 3-bedroom, 2 baths. My guess is I'm gonna be around that 1950. When I did my rental analysis, again, it's not just your mortgage, it's not just your HOA, it is also vacancy loss and future maintenance. Those two are basically big future expenses you have to calculate. And if I can even break even on that, I'll buy it. Right? So as prices gone up, interest rates skewed everything. It's really hard to find some cash flowing assets. I think I was projected to make like $80, $90 or something, but even say we make $15 a month net cash flow. 15 times 12, $180 a month. I mean, $180 a year. What's 180 divided by 60,000? 0.3%. Nothing, right? So clearly we know cash flow is really hard to do unless you're willing to put a ton of money down Or you might go out of state. My partner plays buying Georgia houses like crazy just because the purchase price is way lower, but rent's still decently high. I think I'm willing just to go more commercial or just like grind a little bit to find some of these, but even that, all right, maybe that's just temporarily gone. Debt though, say your $1,600 payment or your mortgage payment, there might be some escrow in there, but typical mortgage payment the first year, what goes to interest in the bank versus what goes to principal pay down? Yeah, maybe $200 is principal. And then $1,400 is interest. Banks are really good at making money. $200 principal. Again, as the amortization schedule changes, right, you're gonna be paying more in principal down. So hopefully that first year is worst case scenario for you on how much of that payment's going to interest. $200 times 12, $2,400 divided by 60,000.
4%.
4%. Okay. Tax. What are the tax benefits? Yeah, so even though I'm making $180 a year, I take a massive loss. And again, the second thing that blows my Argentine's mind, besides mortgage, a leverage, 30-year fixed rate mortgages, is the fact that the government and the IRS allows us to buy an asset or a rental property, and they allow us to depreciate it and create a fake expense for it. Like it's mind blowing. It's the gift of the IRS gods, is what I call it. When you are own a construction company, you gotta go buy a big jacked up truck to haul your equipment and look cool. Clearly, that truck is going to decrease and depreciate in value. So it makes sense that the IRS is letting them use that vehicle or equipment in a construction company and allowed to take that expense. Real estate professionals, we're making money here, we're making money here, we're making money here, and they allow us to write off the value of the home is like crazy. Why do they do that?
So you give other people a place to live.
Yeah, bingo. There's a book called Tax-Free Wealth written by Tax-Free Wealth. It's the most simple explanation of why our tax system is set up the way that it is. There's 3 income brackets in our society: low, middle, high income tax brackets, right? Low income tax brackets typically never pay into society. Those are the ones that all the government programs are there to pay for their life. Those are the people that just generally don't contribute to society financially. High income tax brackets, all over the news, rich don't pay any taxes. The government, Congress, the Senate, they are creating laws to motivate and encourage rich people to go out and invest and grow our economy. The government doesn't grow our economy. They write rules to rich people to tell them to direct their capital. So we, rich people, are the ones that are building businesses, building projects, doing development. Like they're the ones that are expanding society typically. So the government's trying to reward them and motivate them to take money out of their bank account to go do those and take on the risk to do that. That's typically why this book says you're not going to see a lot of the upper class brackets pay taxes. They're creating taxes. When I go develop something, I'm creating property tax, sales tax, all those other things. You're eventually contributing tax-wise. It just might not be out of that person's income. That's traditionally why the middle income tax bracket will bear the tax responsibility for all 3 of the income brackets. So that was such an aha to me, because I always grew up in the poor or the low income bracket. It was probably the first year that I made above $250,000, $300,000. That year I made $300,000. I paid $100,000 in tax. And I'm like, why the freak did I work so hard? Why didn't I just go make $200,000 so I could have paid less tax? You know, that's the rat race of the middle income. And that's also the challenge when you hear we're eroding the middle income tax brackets in our society. It's devastating to an economy. Like, and when you see like Argentina and some of these other economies, it's because they destroyed the middle class. So we've got to keep that going. Otherwise, it's a non-sustainable setup for our economy. So $300,000 condo, it's usually smaller. You usually remove land, whatever the land is, but the cost of any vertical construction you can depreciate, okay? But condos, it's almost all of it for the most part, but let's just use that for an example. A residential property under IRS guidelines, you can depreciate over 27 and a half years, 27 and a half years, okay? So you basically divide that number by 27.5. You do that?
It's 10,909.
I would say 11,000. $11,000. So traditional straight line depreciation, when you buy a rental property, if we just took that 11,000 over 27.5 years, every year, we're gonna take this fake expense of 11,000. So instead of making $180, we actually took an $11,000 loss on our tax set of funds, okay? As a real estate professional designation, again, another just incredible blessing of us being a real estate. When you get that real estate professional, you can take these losses and carry them over from that other left side of your world and make a bunch of money, and then we'll offset those things, okay? So $11,000, say we're a 6% state tax bracket, 24%, federal income tax bracket, 30% of that would be 3,333 maybe. What's that number divided by 60,000? Normally, I would have paid that much in taxes on $11,000 of income that I make in real estate commissions, but because this loss is now offsetting it, I'm saving money on taxation. Okay, so what's that number? 5.5%. So adding these together, we've got 30.5, 34.5, add that up, what's that, 35%? Yeah, 35%. So appreciation, we went with the 5% number, which is 50 years proven to be conservative over time, right? Even if we have 1 year dip, we always make up for it, but it could be more likely to this, but we chose this number. Debt here, 4%, 0.3%. If rates drop, are we going to be able to get our cash flow up? Of course, right? So that hopefully, as rent goes up, that number can only get better if we can refinance. But worst case, that stays there. What about debt reduction? Like that's worst case scenario because year 1, you get to year 3, 5, 7, 8, that number gets better, right? We didn't even talk about cost segregation. Who's cost segregated rental property before? What is that, Corey?
It's when you can accelerate certain, well, really everything with the property, they've got certain years that you can accelerate. So I was told not to do those on lower priced property. I don't know why, maybe you can answer that, but we did them on a higher priced property. 1 year, it literally saved us, like what we could.
You're basically taking this depreciation schedule, and instead of being systematically straight for 27.5 years, you're accelerating it and taking more of it up front by a process that's called cost segregation. They kind of just go monkey with the depreciation schedule. You take that report, give it to your accountant, and it speeds up year 1 specifically, year 2, 3 of your loss and take more of that tax benefit in year 1. So the best example, which is where my light bulb went off, is that Orem Westfield KW building. So I own half that, Boyd owns half of it. It was a $6 million all-in project. Land, fees, the construction of it, everything. We've owned it for 6 years. It was $6 million. We ended up doing an SBA loan because KW is one of the tenants inside of that. So we were able to qualify for an SBA loan, which is a 10% down payment product. SBA loans are a nightmare to get. Once you get them, you love them, but it was about a 9-month process to get that loan. But we put 10% down, $600,000. Boy came with 300, I came up with 300. That year, we built it. We moved in December of like 2017 or something, 2018, and we immediately cost segged it so we could claim it in that same tax year. A $6 million building, commercial buildings aren't 27.5 years. Commercial buildings are over 39 years because they're typically a higher amount. So for 39 years, that building would have probably been somewhere around $120,000 depreciation expense that we could have added into the books every year. Boyd would have had half, I would have had half. So I could have took a $60,000 loss on that building every year for the next, 30 something years. What we did is we accelerated that depreciation schedule. Year one out of the $6 million building, we were able to take a $1.5 million loss year 1. So we basically accelerated 25% of the value of that building into a year 1 loss. So $1.5 million K1 loss. Boyd got half, I got half. Okay, $750,000 loss. Technically, Clay and I owned half, but that year, Clay and I, coincidentally, our net income from our big real estate team was $750,000. And before we had that cost seg report, my accountant told me that out of $750,000 combined, Clay and I would have paid probably about $300,000 in taxes. That $750,000 income from our left side, that $750,000 loss from our right side came down, netted 0. We paid $0 in tax that year. So that 300 grand we would have paid to the IRS that year literally was almost the same dollar amount as our down payment to own that building. So now we didn't pay taxes. We own half of a $6 million, now it's like an $8 million building. We own half of that building with what we would have paid the IRS. Crazy. And again, that's what's called that tax-free wealth. Like it's just, you'll eventually pay taxes, you know, you're deferring it, you're gonna pay it when you pull some of that money out or when you don't do a 1031 or whatever. But if you can kick that tax burden down the road 5-10 years and get that snowballing going, just run that one building time value money, that could be a retirement, right? Crazy. So again, 5.5% straight line, worst case scenario, you could accelerate it and get more like 50 or 100% ROI of that, okay? So again, where investment strategy wise, in a conservative real life example, could you get a 35% ROI of your money? Give me a place. Crypto? Drugs. Crypto invest? Yes. Yes. I don't know what. And every time I give my money to other places to invest, like I just always kick myself back. I could have made a 35% return in real estate. So again, Warren Buffett became one of the richest people on the planet, over 100 billionaire at a 22% ROI a year. 35%, boom, every year. All you have to do is just keep cycling into the room. It's crazy, right? Questions? Who now can do that for your clients? Who's ever drawn that up? Okay.
Question, is that depreciation only if you are an agent, though? Would that change slightly depending on who you're working with?
So when you depreciate a property, so if I had a handful of properties on my right side and I was a NFL athlete, you know, W-2 employee, I made 100 grand on one building, I lost 100 grand, you know, through depreciation on another one. Those can offset each other as, you know, distribution came on. But the process of like taking your loss over to wiping out income in your job or that left side, only designated real estate professionals on the tax class can do that. Okay. Which, you know, there's a bunch of criteria in there, but all of us being real estate professionals, it's incredible. So even in our Midvale office, we have an agent, her husband plays for the 49ers, maybe on the Ravens now or something. You know, think about Patrick Mahomes. You know, Patrick Mahomes, $50 million salary. They're W-2 employees. They tell them where to go, what to do, what meetings, all that. They have to be W-2. $50 million in a W-2, how much disappears? At least that, right? But then also out of $50 million, they don't just pay state tax where their primary residence is. They have to pay state tax in every single city that they play for the proportionate revenue of the game that they played in that. So a lot of these athletes that are traveling, especially NBA and MLB, that play so many games in other cities, they're filing tax returns in like 30 of the states every single year. It's a nightmare. So it's not only double, triple, quadruple taxation sometimes. So I would be shocked, you know, if he ends up with 10 of his 50 million. So I've kind of read numbers. So when people make fun of athletes, like, yes, they're gangsters and they gotta spend all their money on, you know, Rolls Royces and chains and stuff. 95% of NBA athletes file bankruptcy within 2 years of getting in the NBA. That's part of it, because they never really were talking about money, but it's also like their system's set up against that. It sucks with it. But like one of our agents in Midvale, she's the wife of that athlete. So on their tax return, joint tax return, there's still a lot of benefits because she can be the real estate professional in their joint tax return. So if you marry an NFL athlete, perfect. Yep.
How often we can do the cost segregation?
You can only do it once. You can only change your depreciation. You can only accelerate it one time.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, but you pay for it too. I mean, I think it was a couple grand maybe.
Yeah. So the commercial building, that was the first cost seg that I did. I thought at that point you can only cost segregate on commercial properties. Then I quickly learned you could do it on residential properties. So the next 2-3 years, we went and cost seg every other rental property, some that we'd even owned for 7-8 years, just accelerated to get the tax benefit. So there's a couple things. The only thing on a low purchase price, it's just there's a cost you have to pay them to put the report and do the cost segregation analysis. So if you're only going to get a couple $1,000 bang for your buck on the accelerating it, and you're paying them to that might be the reason they said that. The other one is if you're going to cost seg a property, you typically want to own that for at least 5 years, 4 or 5 years minimum. Because if you were to 1031 it into another property, they call it recapturing. You have to recapture some of that, but usually around 5 years, all that recapture is pretty much gone for you to 1031 at that point. So what I do now is every property we do, we immediately cost seg it, take the tax benefit, and then we'll just hold it for another 3-4 years, and then we'll exchange it up. Pretty much every property I own, I've realized I've got to like transition it up to something bigger and better about every 6-7 years. You look at about a loan, right? The average 30-year fixed rate mortgage actually is how long in the country? About 7 years. Yeah, 7 years. Part of it's because the bank is highly incentivized to keep moving their money in and out. Because the amortization schedule, they make like 80% of their money the first 6-7 years of that amortization, and they make the points for the origination fees. So the more they can turn over their money, encourage you to refinance and start new loans. That's why the average loan doesn't be in that time. So even all these low rate fixed rate mortgages, a lot of them, once they start hitting 5, 6, 7 years, my prediction is you're going to start getting notifications from your bank, not just saying, hey, refinance, hey, we're really cool at doing refinances. They're going to start offering you things like, hey, I'll reduce your principal balance $20,000 if you refinance, or I'll cut $50,000 off your loan balance, because when they do their numbers on a new interest rate starting over, they're going to make $150,000. So to give you $50,000 off your balance right now, just to get you refinance, is just going to get their machine moving. So a lot of people just trapped in these low rate mortgages that banks are highly incentivized to get you out of. So, cool. But again, if you're not making a ton of money, or you don't have a taxable income on your left side to offset with your cost seg, that's also where you might want to make the decision to delay a cost seg or something, because you might not need that tax benefit.
Can they carry?
You can go 3 years forward, 2 years backwards, I think. So if you take $1 million loss on a building, but you only have 200 grand of income to write off, that $800,000 leftover carried loss can go forward into future tax returns and go backwards into a couple tax returns. Again, the what's the official name of the Job Tax Cut Act or whatever that we had several years ago, that's all kind of expiring over the next 12 months. So not only are there going to be little changes, because even cost segs kind of had a scale off over the next couple of years. Like whoever gets into the office, president's office, isn't just going to be in charge of redoing a couple of laws. You're going to see a whole overhaul of the tax code the next 24 months. And whether it's Democrats or Republicans, like it's a big job, but like it's going to be very different, the proposals that they're proposing. So okay. Again, here's streams of income. Again, same S corp. Same investment LLC, but as you keep growing your world, once you get a little bit of momentum, you might spiral off a couple businesses that flow into that same S corp. Over here, you might end up, with some more rental properties. You might have some other LLCs. Maybe me and Corey, partnered up on one. Maybe I own another one. Blah blah blah. Even you might start looking at self-directed once you get a little bit of momentum in life. And then again, your bank account, investment account, private homes, those kind of all just flow to your revocable trust there. Here's kind of what mine looks like the last couple of years. Same exact foundational structure. I got my SPOCO S Corp. I got my SPOCO Holding LLC that just flows down as owned by my revocable living trust. And then all the random things I've done the last 5 years are simply structured in a way that they're owned by my S Corp and flow down. So you can see my real estate team. You can see, title, insurance, Westfield, my ownership in the office, my ownership in Argentina, all that different stuff is just another, entity that just simply flows the profit down to my S Corp. I never have employees besides me in my S Corp, because again, this is the best company on the planet to work for. It pays for my technology, it pays for my cars, it pays for my trips, it pays for my food, it pays for everything. The benefits of employees of that company are awesome. You can't work for it. And then over here, your right side, and these are all properties or commercial buildings or just holding companies. I might be partners on it. I might own a little bit. I might own all of it, but eventually it all flows down to my holding entity. Once you get about $1 million-ish in rental property equity, that's where it makes sense to set up your COPE, your Charging Order Protection Entity LLC. And I don't hold any properties in here. It just owns my ownership in all the other LLCs. Because there's a thing. Does anybody know why? Or I give you why? What's COPE? Do you have COPE?
No.
What'd you say the amount was you recommend?
About $1 million of equity on this right side. Once you get about $1 million of equity that you're trying to hold, protective and liability, that's usually where it makes sense to have a co-entity come in. You don't have it set up, you guys should have it set up.
Because it separates, it gives you legal protection because it separates.
Yeah, so, there's only like 13 states that do it, but it's just a type of LLC that will only, if it's considered a disregarded single member entity for me, but it only comes into play if I actually get sued. So when you set up an LLC and you put your rental property in LLC, why are you doing that liability protection wise? Besides, everybody tells you to do it.
Your personal, but only your personal.
Yeah, so part of it, you're sheltering that rental property, not stuff coming into it, you're sheltering the liability from coming out of it. So you have one rental property with a house in it, you got $200,000 of equity into it. Your tenant says, hey, you didn't, plow the snow, every day for a week, and then day 8, they come slip, crack their head open, they sue you, and they have a case against you because you didn't maintain that property. They could sue you, but the reason you have an LLC is the only thing they're gonna have access to in a lawsuit is what's within that LLC, okay? So they can come in, you might have liability insurance on your landlord policy that they could tap into first. Anything deficient or judgment beyond that is gonna tap into your equity, but they're not gonna pierce out of that and come get your gold bullion in your safe, right? That's why you have the LLC. That protects inside, outside liability. The reason you have a co is what's called outside, inside. So even though Corey has an LLC around that same house, 200 grand equity in it, that it's protected from anything inside. He's out there, he gets into a bar fight, hits someone one time and he blows their head up because he's so strong. Their family sues him. They can go in and pierce into all of these entities. Okay, so that's why you have this, that's a charging order on the lawsuit that they basically can sue into that. But then it stays there. So it creates another layer of protection from coming into your rental properties. That protects outside to inside liability. But again, it's just another entity you gotta pay to set up, you gotta maintain it, you gotta, register it every single year, you gotta get your annual minutes. It's just another pain in the butt. And that's why they kind of set that $1 million equity threshold to bring in that co-entity. And that's not a normal LLC, it's a little bit more complex. So that's one that I for sure paid an attorney to set up versus me trying to just do it on my own. What else? Same thing on S Corp. That S Corp doesn't actually do services or have any business products. All it does is the holding company for all those other LLCs that simply flow my profit down. Okay. And then my goal every year is to take $1 million loss here and then take $1 million net income here, and then it offsets to 0. And if I die, boom, I've just got the paper trail of how it passes on my legs. Okay. I self-directed my retirement. If you don't know what that is, we had Matt Sorensen come and we did a region-wide more club several years ago. Matt Sorensen's like the expert in self-directing retirement, even specifically for real estate people. I self-directed my retirement out of, whatever it was, TD Ameritrade or whatever. I rolled that IRA $50,000 over. I created my own retirement that my S Corp is the employer. I'm the employee of it, so I can contribute to that retirement. I get an employer deduction. I can contribute as an employee. Usually every year I do $30,000, $40,000 into my 401k. Usually it maxes out somewhere around 50,000, but that's the other reason you self-direct is because you can create a solo 401k so you can get more money into it. An IRA, $5,000, $6,000, it's hard to get money in there to enjoy the tax benefits. And then that 401k, instead of owning 100 shares of Apple stock, it just owns 100% of shares of my IRA LLC, the SCOCO 401k LLC. So that's owned by my retirement program. Coincidentally, I'm just the manager of it. So I can have checkbook authority to invest it where I want as the manager of that entity. So my whole goal is just to own a 4-plex or a little apartment building or something in that retirement program, and then that could be my retirement income out of that. I also ended up doing my health savings account. Most people don't know you can self-direct a health savings account. I first got on the health savings account like 10 years ago. I would put money in, I'd swipe that card for my medical expenses. Then I learned that the balance can carry over year to year. So if I have $1,000 left over, it can roll into the next calendar year. The second thing I learned is that balance, you can actually invest into things. I was with Health Equity for a long time, and they just had like 10, 20 mutual funds that I could put it in. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm investing my health savings account. Same verdict happened. I realized I was only making 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% of my money. I found out you can self-direct it, so I have the same thing. I contribute $7,000 a year to my Spoko HSA. It also owns its LLC that I'm the manager of. I move the money over and then I can just invest it however I want. So even I can just get one rental property in there, that'll be awesome.
Do you wanna do mine?
Once you, it's a pain to go through it. Once you just simply self-directed it, got it all set up. To keep it is so easy. You just gotta suffer the pain for like a month.
Did you set this up?
So, LLCs are pretty easy. You just need to register with the state and get your EIN and you need a simple operating agreement. So I'll do some of my own, just single member LLCs or something. The COPE entity, you have to use an attorney. I recommend that KKOS, lawyer law firm. They own a law firm, a CPA firm, and a self-directed company now. So KKOS is like, Kyler, Ostermiller, Kohler, whatever. So Mark Kohler's one, Matt Sorensen is an owner, but Chris Kyler, who's the UAR president, who's a total stud, love that guy. He's also an owner of that as well. So I use them for my, self-directed, my COPE, and maybe a couple random more complex.
I mean, like the structure itself, did you have somebody like sit down and kind of help you map this out?
It's pretty simple, like.
It doesn't look simple
No,
from here.
So who has the retirement program? Where is it at? It's like a random financial company, like TD Ameritrade or something. I had that for years, so wherever that's at, I started the process with them, and it's just a little bit more complex than LLC. You just gotta go through paperwork, they ask you some questions, and they basically set up your retirement program. They did that. I don't even know what they did. They just did it, right? Second thing was I took that existing retirement program that I had 51,000 in. They gave me a couple docs. I sent them to this company and it rolled that $51,000 into that retirement program. And then they simply just set up the LLC that is owned by that. And then I have bank accounts. So I have one bank account for this, one bank account for this. I simply do one contribution a year for 30, 40 grand. It goes into that. And then I just get online and I transfer it over to here. And then I have 40 grand sitting in an LLC. Once it's sitting in an LLC, you know how to go invest money sitting in an LLC. So it's really like 2-3 steps. Yeah. They're just the only complex part of self-directed is they just handle it all. The only complex thing that you have to learn, you got to take a couple classes on, is there's just a couple restricted things that you can't do in a retirement program because they're viewed by the IRS as additional benefits or contributions to your retirement program. So like over here, I can go buy a rental property and then I'm the contractor. I can go do $10,000 of free labor on that rental property. And then I can pull up, out, get a loan or whatever. That's viewed by the IRS that I'm putting $10,000 additional into my retirement fee. So when you try to go do real estate in your 401k LLC, you can do all the accounting, administration, you can buy the property, all those sort of things, but there's just a couple things you can't do. You can't do sweat equity beyond administrative duties. So you have to hire subs. The second thing you can't do is you can't go get a personal, like a loan that you're guaranteeing. Because again, if you guarantee a loan, that's shown as you're contributing more to a retirement program. So you usually just need to do creative financing, or you have to do like a non-recourse loan that just requires a little bit more down payment on that. I've actually just been putting in the little developments that we're doing already. And you also can't do transactions with up and down your family tree. I can't buy some for my dad, I can't buy some for my kids or something, just because those are the higher likely things that shadiness happens, right? I'm gonna buy it for my kid, or whatever, so. Cool. Who has an S corp or an entity over here for your real estate business? Who has LLCs or an LLC or something that you own your rental property? Who has some sort of simple estate plan? Who has a will? Okay, who has a trust set up? Okay. I always recommend there's two types of trust. There's revocable and there's irrevocable. Revocable means it's basically on paper, you name it as a beneficiary, but it actually only comes alive when you're dead. So my grandma passed away 4 years ago, and I luckily got named as the executor or the trustee of that trust, which is a miserable experience because all the family hates you, and you're all stealing from everybody, blah, blah, blah. But revocable, we had her a revocable trust. Basically, when she died, I had to take that trust and I had to apply for EIN, had to go get a bank account, and it turns into an entity. So during your life, you can revoke it, you can change it, you can edit it, you can change the people that you're choosing on things, you can change where your stuff goes. Irrevocable is just a whole nother complexity of it's irrevocable. It's really hard to change. You don't have all the control or whatever. But there's some other tax benefits and stuff that come with your. Okay. We talked about cost seg, the only other thing I usually talk about is this number 9, is protect your house insurance, estate planning, entity structure. So the last thing is just insurance. Like the more money you make or the more wealth you build. Brett Tanner and Gary Keller, they always say they spend 4 days making money and then they spend the 5th day trying to keep and protect it. And as you go up in net worth or you start getting equity, like the increase in likelihood that you're gonna get sued or people are gonna come after you are just there. You gotta make sure your insurance is there. You gotta make sure your documents are in order. You know, the whole piercing the veil thing, all that. You gotta just make sure that you're protecting and structuring your world to keep it. And I was an insurance agent for 2 years before I got into real estate. And I was there long enough, not a ton of time, but I was there long enough just to kind of understand that like terrible things happen to totally innocent people. Like one of the scenarios was a guy who was golfing, and I'm assuming some of you might be like me. When you hit the ball, it doesn't go this way; it goes like this way. But we had a client that hit a golf ball. It randomly hit a dude in the head, knocked him out. He had to be airlifted from the golf course, and he ended up getting sued. It cost him like $400,000 of liability. Helicopter rides aren't cheap these days if you do one. But $400,000. Luckily, a month before this happened, we had called that guy and on his homeowner's policy, because the state minimum, your homeowner's policy doesn't just insure the actual house and all the crap in it. It also has liability coverage that is there for like a lawsuit type of scenario. He had $100,000 state minimum on his liability of his homeowner's policy. And we were proactively calling our clients and bidding out going from $100,000 to $300,000 in liability. And it was $7 difference in a year period of time. So he luckily was one that answered the call. We gave him a quote and we just increased it. When that happened, the first $300,000 came out of his homeowner's insurance policy that had nothing to do with his house. He was on a golf course, and then he ended up having to come up with the other $100,000. So it would have bankrupted him if he was liable for the full $300,000. Just houses burning down. You know, most of the time, even your properties. Whatever your homeowners or landlord policies cover, most likely are the most non-common disasters to happen to that area. And one of the things about being regional director is we have to be on the calls of when there's natural disasters, that the regional directors over those areas are coming on the calls to report what's happening with our KW family. And we've had tornadoes, we've had hurricanes, we've had fires, earthquakes, all sorts of stuff that happen terribly to people, specifically when it involves our Keller Williams people. Like tornadoes, anywhere that you have a likelihood of a tornado, those homeowners insurance companies have already pulled out tornado insurance. What do you think the most likely disaster is to hit? You know, a big one, right? The earthquake. How many of your homeowners insurance policies cover earthquakes? 0. You have to go get an earthquake policy.
Well, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah, it's pricey. And especially the last year, like insurance rates have gone up 40%, 50%. So when I built my house, I put a significant amount of money into it. So I shifted money from other things into my house equity. And when I look up, I'm like, man, there's enough in here. I got to protect it. So I ended up getting an earthquake policy, and I got a flood policy on top of my normal home policy. So. Okay, and you can insure anything, like you Wikipedia types of insurance, like you can literally insure anything out there. It's crazy. There's some dirty ones on there. About the cats that you people are obsessed with insuring parts of their body, like Jakey does. Not anymore. The main types: life, health, disability, auto, home, umbrella. You guys understand life, minimum, just get a term policy. Once you want to get more sophisticated, looking at some of the cash value policies. Health insurance is a disaster. We'll skip that category, but it is what it is. Disability insurance, who has disability insurance in here? You're 90% more likely to get disabled before retirement than you are to die before retirement. Whereas most people have a life insurance policy, not a disability policy. And the story I always tell them that is just my partner Clay. We were in a KW indoor soccer team when Clay got kicked in the face. He was goalie, he went to get a ball, and the guy kept going. Kneed Clay in the face, shattered his whole face. He's got titanium plates all over it, you don't even know, but his eye, he can't see out of his eye. Like total lost his right eyesight. And he was in the ICU or the hospital for like a week and a half. And it was just like such a wake up call, like, man, like, because the doctor told him that it was like a very high probability that the other eye will follow that one and you'll go blind in both, because we like to stick together, I guess. So there was a huge chance that he was gonna go blind in the other eye. I'm like, we started talking about it, we're like, if you go blind, that is a giant financial loss of our business. Like, what are we gonna do? You know, like, I was gonna type on his computer, I couldn't. So immediately I went out and got disability insurance on myself, and we looked at him getting it as well, and he can't get it. He can't get disability. He can't even get a different life insurance policy now. It's crazy. Auto insurance, you get it. Even a lot of random auto things, you know, you got comprehensive, you got collision coverage. Collision is if it's your fault, comprehensive if it's not. But I know nobody reads like the details of your policy. You should at least try to do it. Because even auto, like if you're on the freeway and something falls out of a truck and it's like bouncing and you slam into it, it totals your car. Some of the policies, there's like different inch rules. If it's bouncing above 6 inches on the thing and it hits you, it's not your fault. If it's 5 inches, 6 inches and below and you hit it, it's your fault. Like there's all weird little things on there you gotta know. And then you got home and then umbrella, which is just a general policy that goes over there. If you're gonna build wealth, you need a legal container to hold your wealth. Your estate plan is a legal container that holds your wealth. Your estate plan will be a combination of entities, real properties outside of trust, entities and real properties inside of trust, filled with insurance. And that's it. Whew. I could teach all about estate planning a whole nother 2 hours, but you guys fall asleep, so maybe we'll come back and do that. Okay, questions? Ahas. We need like 10 of them. What's one thing that stuck out today that you're gonna go deploy in your wealth building practice the next year?
Buy another house.
So crazy. Good. What else?
I say the 4 major benefits of the rental, that's opens your eyes a lot.
Yeah, even clients that are sitting on the fence right now, you just run very reasonable conservative property, it gets them off the fence. Can't afford not to buy things. What else? Devin?
I have a question actually for, I know keeping cash in the bank is not the best thing to do, but what's a guideline percentage just to kind of be safe to cover yourself?
Yeah.
Cause we struggle with that. I like to have a lot in the bank and he's like, that's dumb. And I know it is, but it makes me feel safe to have.
Right.
Yeah, like where do you put your cash?
Yeah, like how much, like what percent?
I'm in the, like, kind of, I'm shifting my priorities quickly right now, just because of how much any cash has depreciated over the last 2, 3, 4 years. I have a security metric for me too, like even just one of my savings account, I've always had 100 grand in there for like 7 years, because A, it's my emergency reserve, but it's very easy to show that as my reserves when I qualify for a mortgage, just because no transactions go in and out of that. But that 100 grand, you know, that was 100 grand 5 years ago is probably worth 70 grand now, just with inflation, and it just drives me crazy. I'm moving away from savings, to be honest. I've actually, because I have some HELOCs on my personal residence and stuff like that, I've probably got a little less conservative, just because I feel like the markets came down in a lot of asset classes that I'm starting to move that in there. I actually have 3 pieces of my balance sheet. I have my left side, I have my right side, and then I have my personal side, which is basically money that you take off the table. When you talk about wealth building, this is what Gary always talks about. You know, wealth doesn't come like this. Wealth comes in like sprints, and then markets like we're in now, you kind of like level off. You have to readjust your strategy, all that. But this is also, he just said this to us 2 weeks ago, this is also where he takes money off the table. And when you have a dollar in your world, like your natural goal is to optimize that dollar. Like that dollar every year should become $1.35 or whatever. You still have to have a portion or a percent of your income that you're taking off the table, that your goals are not to maximize that dollar. It's just for pure security, you know, paying off your house, all that sort of stuff. One of the things he did a long time ago is he started buying municipality bonds. So as he was making money, whatever percent was, he would go own municipality bonds, because that was just his worst case safety metrics, that he was going to make 3, 4, 5% dividends off whatever he's got in there. And he had a goal, how does he actually pay for his life out of the passive income from municipality bonds? The reason he chose municipality bonds in the state of Texas is they're lawsuit proof as well. There's a handful of assets out there that are litigation proof. Some retirement programs, some types of government bonds are there. So that's part off his table. So I've lowered my expectations on cash reserves that I actually want to take off the table. I still have some of my business, but you see how litigious our society's become. Like even KW Westfield, like we've moved a lot of our owners' reserves out of there because worst case, we didn't know what was gonna happen, all these lawsuits, like whatever's in the bank account is susceptible to lawsuit. KWI is like, I can't remember what the budget on it, but it's like $40-50 million expense a month. It's a very big machine. Gary Keller keeps 2 weeks of reserves in that business, just because, it's on the table, like you can get sued. So I'm actually, if you have line of credits that you can trust in, that if something happened, you can, use that as like emergency reserves. So I'm doing a little less cash. At one point I had anywhere from 5 to 10% of my net worth as a cash reserve goal. 5% as like the market's running up, but as soon as I feel like we're due for a correction, maybe beef up your cash to 10% of your net worth, just so you have some readily available. And I did that a little bit, but now I'm kind of coming more out of it than going into it. I'm actually pulling my cash out, putting it in stuff personally. So I don't know. You just gotta figure out whatever your percent is that you take off the table. Once it's off the table, you can never have the conversation that you're gonna re-enter it into the game and make money. So pay off your house, have some emergency reserve bonds or whatever. So cool. What else? Any other Haas? Sure.
I'm just excited now to like literally revamp a new 10-year. Like just get that solid.
Yeah. It's a long game, but a 5-10 year perspective, you could be exactly where you want to be 5-10 years from now. You just gotta live the habits that are gonna put you on pace for that money. Okay, anybody else?
What I heard is real estate professionals are very valuable to NFL players. So
Yeah,
Yes.
I've been telling Addison, Mary Rich, I'm now gonna remind her to get a real estate license and strictly go for it.
Yep. Do it. I like it. Doctor, lawyers.
Yeah.
I think that calculator at the beginning is really a good habit to get into using, just seeing that kind of from that perspective. Because I see some opportunities that cost segregation could have just accelerated that much more.
Yeah.
quicker.
Yeah, the time value of money is, that calculator and that concept is the number one thing that motivated me to live below my means. When I see new cars rolling in, or I see this agent that made the same or even less money buying the boat or the second home or something, like whatever the time period is that you're gonna commit to delaying your lifestyle, which is very hard to do. The time value of money calculator, I'm like, those Wendy's chicken nuggets turn into $2.3 million 8 years from now, or whatever, right? And as your lifestyle goes and you build a bigger empire, you can be less disciplined and still make a ton of progress. So cool. Anything else? Good. Okay.
thank you.
Awesome. That's it. And I'm actually doing something similar for time that I'll come back in a few months and teach just a lot of just the way I've learned to use time in my life. So, and anybody in our More Club, like if you ever want to call me and have questions, like the More Club's usually who I like talking to. So even if you need a little Zoom meeting and we can go through your stuff, happy to do that as well. So
Oh my gosh. Hey.
Bill.
Thank you, Jonny.
Okay.
That one.